What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And my guest, all the way from London, England, is Phil Woodford. Hello, Phil.
Hi there, Gary. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. And we're going to go over like a crazy interesting topic that's on everybody's mind right now. And hopefully, Phil can get us more confused or straighten us out. Who knows? It's not an easy topic, right?
It certainly isn't, and I'd be foolish if I said that some of it doesn't confuse me too.
So, Phil, I'm just going to read your intro real quick and we will get cooking. So, everybody, we have Phil Woodford, and he's a former advertising creative director based in London, England, who works as a writer, trainer, and lecturer. In his short book, AI and the Redundant Human, he looks at one of the hottest topics of our time. Is AI going to take away employment and meaning from human beings? Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Bill Gates all envisioned an extraordinary world without work. But what would that actually mean for people's livelihoods, the economy, and the wider society as a whole? And how will we cope physiologically from the fallout? Phil looks at the threat of creative industries such as advertising, gaming, and the movies and asks whether job losses could extend to a wide range to other sectors too, from medicine, law, science, and psychotherapy through to teaching, administration, and customer service. He offers a 6 point action plan to manage and prepare for the changes that lie ahead, which he argues should act as a wake up call to government, businesses, and individuals alike. Phil has an honors degree in sociology from the London School of Economics and a master's degree in occupational business psychology from Kingston's University London. He is formerly co-host of a weekly news review show on Colorful Radio between 2015 and 2024, broadcast from London's Africa Centre. Phil is a trustee of a London-based charity that provides free counseling for young people. And that must keep you busy because these poor young people seriously need a lot of counseling. So thank you for that. Thank you, thank you,
No,
thank you.
there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need out there, Gary. Yeah, absolutely, and we do our best to help as many people as we can.
Yeah, I think on both sides of the pond, our young folks are struggling. So I'd love to get in that. I definitely want to get in the AI, but of course, like I mentioned, I am contractually obligated. I don't know why I say that. I am contractually obligated to ask my guests the what if you could question. So, Phil, have you had a what if you could moment or what if you could thought
Well,
that you'd love to share us before we jump in?
I've been thinking more and more as I've got older, Gary, about what if I could go back and have a conversation with my younger self, and what advice would I give to myself if I could? And it's a it's a tricky one because I think you'd agree that when let's say I go back and meet my kind of 20-year-old self or something like that, we have no idea. We can't envision really how things are going to play out in the years ahead. It's almost like we're the same person, but we're two very different people as well. And I think my advice would actually be, um, don't feel like the burdens of the world are on your shoulders and that you've got to be able to solve every problem. I mean, I've always taken an active interest in the world around me, in society, how people behave and how we get on with each other. And I guess from a young age, I was quite active politically and I was keen to see things changing. But I also felt that maybe I needed to have a solution for everything. If there was some problem that was troubling the world, you know, I should I should know the answer to it. And I think as I've got older, I've realized often there isn't an answer, or that it's messy, it's complex, and we need to be quite honest with ourselves that things are not kind of black and white. There's not easy answers to a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, and I guess that ties in with um, my current pet obsession, which is the AI issue. Because although I do make recommendations in my book for kind of what we should do, um, I also don't claim that I could possibly have a real roadmap for something that's unfolding in real time and affecting potentially so many aspects of everybody's lives. This has got to be a collective discussion.
Game, I love that because I've done 200 over 250 of these, and no one's ever said that. And for
Okay.
me, because I beat myself up like constantly on mistakes I've made in the past, because I'm 62, I should be a multimillionaire and retired by now, but I'm not because I made
Mhm.
two. I turned left when I should have turned right, or I turned right when I should have turned left twice, and it's been a
Mm,
disaster. So no one's ever said that, but I think about that all the time. What would be the amount of time I would go back? Like if I
mm,
needed to go back to fix the disaster that I am now, how far back would I go? And for me, it always seems to be 2020, 2004.
right.
2004, I made a crucial error when I should have turned right. I turned, and then of course in the United States, and I think most of the world, we got 2008, 2009, which really trashed us. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. If we could go back even further and talk to our 11-year-old self or 15-year-old self, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what could we do as far as developing people? And you work with youth,
Mhm.
so you've kind of got that hindsight that you could share with the youths of the world to kind of help them, right, and guide them.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I also work, professionally as a mentor to people, so I help them in their working lives. As you said in the intro, I used to be a creative director and a copywriter. So I work with people who are younger than me. I also run training courses, and very often the people who attend the training courses are much younger than me. And it is an opportunity, I guess, to say, well, um, I may not know everything, but I've clocked up a few years of experience. And does that bring wisdom? Well, we all make mistakes and we all make misjudgments, don't we? But I hope there's stuff that I can pass on to other people as well as to my imaginary former self.
Yeah, gosh, if we could do that. But it brings up kind of an interesting, you know, I'm not very smart, so I don't know words very well, but you've got your AI world, which
Mm,
is just, out there, right? Who even knows where this is going to take us? But then you have a very grounded, thoughtful, working with young people mindset, which yeah, you want to be fantasy and you want to talk about the future and things like that, but also you want to help them maybe get through what they're going through at the time, right? So how do you
yeah.
deal with those two kind of worlds? They're kind of two separate things, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're sort of separate, but I guess they're interrelated as well because, as the world changes very, very fast, probably some of the opportunities that young people thought that might be available to them in the future could be
Yeah,
starting to slip away. I do fear that. I mean, one of the
yeah,
things that we're seeing that the CEO of Anthropic, the big AI company that's funded by Amazon and Google, he said a couple of months ago that a lot of entry level jobs are going to disappear. So the jobs that people go into at the bottom rung of an organization or a business, and they do the grunt work, they learn the ropes, they work their way up, and he was saying, well, actually, half of those jobs are going to be gone by 2030. And we've actually seen in the UK recently some quite concrete evidence that, for instance, big accountancy firms are cutting back on the number of graduates. they're employing, for instance. So people coming out of college thinking that they're going to go on this kind of career path, perhaps the career path is no longer going to be there. Then that raises another question, of course, which is, well, surely the people who start out at the bottom, they become the middle layer, and then they eventually become the top. This is what we've been used to over the years, but that kind of sense of progression maybe is going to go as well. And so I do think that young people are particularly in the firing line with the changes that we're seeing, and they might actually be impacted more quickly. I mean, okay, there's also an impact on people my age. You know, I'm in my mid 50s, and you know, the work that I've been doing over the last sort of 20 years is changing very rapidly, and so I'm not immune from it. But I think young people, a lot of the certainties are disappearing, and that's a real worry.
I in America, these genius governors and mayors, these genius people who are so brilliant, have decided that we're going to keep raising the minimum wage $20, $25, $30, $50 an hour, right?
Mhm.
And so, in their genius way of thinking, oh, we're going to help the people who they need a living wage, right, to work at
Yeah.
McDonald's. Well, what they don't realize is between the AI and what's happening so fast with robotics and things like that, what they're actually just doing is taking a company and helping them remove their employees, right? It's like, well, we can't afford to pay you $30 an hour to take an order for McDonald's, right? So now we have four kiosks, and we have one guy who puts the burger in a box, and then another guy who makes sure that the burgers are coming in off the truck. So you had 20 people in a business, and now you have two people in a business, but you pay
Mm.
them $30 an hour, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's amazing how fast that's happening, isn't it? And the young guys are
Yeah, yeah.
getting hammered.
Well, yeah, and you again, you're talking about two sort of separate strands that are coming together here. You know, there's a long-standing debate, obviously, in a lot of countries over the idea of the minimum wage and the level that it's set at, and how that impacts business, how it impacts jobs. And, you know, we can all have our own sort of opinions about where the right level for this kind of
Yeah.
government intervention is. But you're absolutely right to say that in a world where technology is changing so fast, it becomes easier and easier for businesses, employers to balk at the idea of paying higher wages to people when they know that actually AI can drive down wages, and where people's skills are not so much in demand anymore. Where I mean, I think Wendy's in the States has certainly been experimenting with um, sort of automated um, preparation and service of burgers and so on. I mean, I don't think that incidentally the jobs that involve physical labor at the moment are the most threatened. I mean, clearly there is a threat from robotics, and I do think that in, say, Amazon warehouses, we will see a move towards that becoming a world of robots. And they have a project underway to create robots that are actually, you know, already quite proficient at being able to pick stuff off shelves and, you know, find the right orders for customers and so on at the same level of efficiency as a human. So I do think there are a number of blue collar workers that are threatened by robotics, but I think the main threat in the short term is probably going to be with people who are sitting at desks in offices, and they're using their brains, or they're employed to be creative or to do basic administrative work and this kind of stuff. I think these are the people who are most easily replaced.
Did you happen to see the Joe Rogan interview with Bernie Sanders,
I have to admit
the podcast?
I haven't seen it, Gary, but you had to fill me in on the headlines there.
I I wasn't going to watch it because I really could care less what Bernie Sanders has to say about anything. But my son watched it, and he is an AI. He's beyond crazy about it. He's so fascinated by it. So he said, Dad, did you watch? Because we watch a lot of different podcasts now. I've never had, but he said, did you see the Rogan with that? I go, no, and he goes, Bernie Sanders literally didn't have a clue at all about anything with AI. Basically, he's a socialist, so everything that he had to say about it was, well, this is great because we won't have to have workers work. We'll just pay them a universal wage and they can stay home and do
Well,
whatever they
yeah, yeah.
want. And I'm
Well,
like,
I mean,
Bernie,
the left. I mean, this universal basic income idea is really quite fascinating because
yes.
the people who advance it are usually on the fringes of political, well, have been up until now anyway, on the fringes. And on the left-wing fringe, there's this idea that obviously that the state provides an income for people. It allows, it alleviates poverty. It allows people to be more creative and entrepreneurial and this kind of thing. Although the left has always been incredibly vague about the math of it and how actually this adds up and how you pay for it. But then there's also a right wing fringe, a sort of
Right, yeah.
libertarian fringe who believed in universal basic income as almost kind of a way of the state washing their hands of people entirely. It's kind of like here's a pot of money for you. Now off you go, and it's sink or swim kind of thing. And don't come running to us if you end up, needing your kid
Homeless.
educated in a, or yeah, end up homeless or need welfare or need, or any of these kind of things. Now, I think both of those kind of points of view seemed kind of weird and extreme in the past, but there is a genuine challenge now that if unemployment starts to rise around the world because of AI, we will see a major loss of tax revenue for governments. We will see people without income, um, who are unable to spend in the economy. So capitalism revolves around the idea of consumers having money to spend, and we're also going to have more demands on welfare systems. And I don't think any of these scenarios is very great. And so then the issue of universal basic income does become more mainstream. But who's going to pay for it? You see, my contention is that the AI tech businesses that have foisted all of this stuff on us. I mean, let's say you and I, we didn't vote for this, Gary. We didn't stick our hands up or say, oh yeah, please transform our world and revolutionize it with all this AI, and we'll just live with the consequences. They foisted it on us, and my contention is that those businesses are the ones that should be picking up the cost of any redundancy that the technology causes. And I don't think you have to be a kind of radical socialist to believe that. I mean, it's a question to my mind of kind of responsibility, and also the fact that where is the money going to be? It's going to be with those tech companies and also other very, very large corporations who have profited from the tech. Um, and if we can't get the money from them, I don't see any way that governments are going to be able to sustain the welfare payments or a basic wage for people.
Yeah. Well, I think every government on the planet except China is completely flat broken and massive amounts of debt. China seems to be the only country in the world currently. They're in a lot of trouble too, but I mean, seem to be the only country in the world that actually have assets and money. Every other country in the world is bankrupt, right? So they just keep printing endless amounts of money. And Zuckerberg with Facebook talked about Zuckerbucks, right? Well, he's just going to pay you to sit home and just play on Facebook and you don't have to do anything. But that's a disaster. But taking what you said for a second and thinking there's always been massive industries that's gone away, right? Like we
Sure.
don't have guys who we pay to go behind horse carriages and pick up horse poop anymore,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And we don't have to have stables for the horses because we have the horseless carriage, we have a car. There's always industries that have evolved. So people have always seemed to find a way through that. But I think this is so much more dramatic than that, don't you? I mean, I think this could be at a grander scale where it's going to be a lot harder to absorb all these people.
I completely agree. I think there are two issues here, Gary. The first is the speed with which this is happening. We are seeing these changes sort of come about in real time and advancing almost too fast for us to process as a society or to have the kinds of discussions that you and I are having now. And the other thing is that AI is going to replace whole swathes of work. So what I would call kind of cognitive work, creative work, definitely professional work, ultimately probably blue collar work as well through robotics, although as I say, I see that as a kind of a secondary thing. Um, and so what will happen is people will be displaced from one job where they kind of use their brain power, their knowledge, their creativity, whatever it is. They'll be displaced from that job, but they'll find that other jobs that they might go into will also be displaced by AI. And then there's this idea, well, AI might create new work. And this seems plausible, doesn't it? Because we are used to the idea that when one industry disappears, new job, the internet, for instance, would be a great
Yeah.
example of this. Before the internet, if you wanted to go on holiday, you went to maybe a travel agency where there were people sitting behind a desk with brochures of destinations, and you'd have a chat with them, and they would book it for you. And those guys went, but then you had lastminute.com, and you've got people working in the call centers and all of that. So it seems very plausible. But my question is this: if AI is so good at replacing the work we're doing now, why will it not be very good at doing the work that it creates? What
Hmm.
kind of work is it going to be creating where it says, hold on a second, this is too difficult for me. You know, I've got this PhD level intelligence that's got rid of all the existing jobs, but now I've created work that really we need humans for, and you're going to have to come back. I mean, I just don't see it, Gary. I really, really don't, I'm afraid.
But you know what's interesting about, I remember, because I'm a real estate broker by trade. I just do this because I am fascinated by people like you, and I am so grateful I get to meet people like you. But I'm a real estate broker by trade, 35 years. So we used to have real estate books that came out every week, and it'd have the new home listings and how to show them. And we had these thick books we carried around, and then we had to call people from our office because we didn't have cell
Hmm.
phones. And then when the internet came out, it said it is going to destroy real estate. You won't need realtors anymore because
Right,
internet's going to replace them, right? And my wife at the time was a travel agent. And I
right,
remember it's like, uh-oh, your industry's toast. Come work with me. But what's happened is travel agencies are booming again because I think
right.
people who have the wherewithal are
Hmm.
just burned out from searching all these different sites and trying to put this together. They just go, hey, Susie, I want to go to the Caribbean for 2 weeks on a really nice
Yeah.
place. Just set this up for me. I'm sick of this internet stuff. So, you're
I,
right. So
I I get that. I I can feel that. I can feel
So
that
so
sense of
maybe
trying to.
AI does kind of the same thing, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
maybe AI, yeah, we kind of screwed that industry a little bit, but there's aspects of that people will still want some sort of hands-on control of.
I think so, but I also think that it might become the preserve of a kind of elite or a small group of consumers that
Yeah.
have more
Yeah.
money, more time, and so on. I mean, I understand the frustrations of the situation you described because I've tried to book vacations online, and you're sort of driven slightly insane by going
God.
from one offer to another offer and by the time you've got to the fifth one, you can't remember the first one, and it's well, maybe that's my age. And so, having someone curate that for you, yeah. But I actually think that um, by and large, that will be, fairly small scale, and that most people will still book online. The next stage with an industry like travel is that you have an AI agent that goes
Yeah.
and finds you your vacation. So I say to
Yeah.
this AI agent, I give it what they would describe as a mandate, if you like. I say, right, I want to go to Europe for a couple of weeks and I want to see some of the big sites of Europe. Can you put an itinerary together for me? Here's my budget, and provided you don't exceed this budget for the 2 weeks, I'm happy for you to go away and find the best providers and book the hotels and the flights and all the rest of it. And then off it goes, and it does its own thing, and it comes back with the package. Now, obviously, you could build in a kind of approval process. It comes back to you, and you say, "Oh yeah, well, I like the look of this." But in theory, there's nothing to stop it, particularly on smaller purchases,
Yeah.
just going off and doing it. Um, and then that raises all kinds of weird questions as well, because like when you go onto a website, for instance, and we're reading what the copy says, and we're looking at the pictures and the videos, and we're trying to make up our minds. Do we buy this? Do we not? What do we think of these people? Is it credible? Maybe it won't be us looking anymore. Maybe it'll be the AI agents. And maybe they won't be swayed by the kind of stuff. They won't be swayed by the fact there's lots of pretty pictures and fancy looking video content and so on. Perhaps they'll be primed just to find the most functional fit for for their client, if you like, at the best price. And then, what does that mean for you've cultivated a brand identity? I've worked in advertising over the years, and people spend a lot of money, don't they, cultivating a brand. If you think about something like Apple, for instance, the brand, in a sense, is everything. Or why do you have an iPhone as opposed to a Samsung phone, or some other brand? Possibly because you think Apple's cool and you prefer to have that association. But maybe the AI agent doesn't care. Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
they don't see it in the same way, and they can find
Yeah.
you what they consider to be a perfectly good working smartphone, um, for less cost than the Apple product, and tell you that it does all the same things. So, as you can see, this is a kind of world where one thing builds on another, and there's a kind of knock-on effect. And I think it's a lot of these knock-on effects that people are kind of scratching their heads about at the moment. We just don't know quite where any of this is going to end up.
Yeah. Just to finish on that travel agent thing, and as you take me down that rabbit hole, because of what my son does, my son is obsessed with AI. He uses it for everything. He'll buy toilet paper with AI. It's just ridiculous. Which is the best toilet paper and why? But when it comes to that travel agent, you're right, because in less than a second, it will analyze every review of every resort that came up in your parameters, every airline. I mean, it will do 10 hours of work in a second and then send it to you and say, this is the best itinerary based on all the reviews, all this, the history of these companies, what's happening, what maintenance is coming up on them. I mean, it's that bizarre. And so a travel
Yes.
agent isn't possibly able to do that. So in any case, yeah, I just wanted to finish on that because you're right. I mean, it will just, why would you not use that to book your trip? And you, yeah, you missed the travel agent. You feel bad about that person being replaced. But as this moves forward, we will no longer. It's like your refrigerator right now just sends you a text message. Oh, you're going to the store today? I saw that in your schedule. But don't forget to get milk and eggs because you're low. Because
Yeah,
your
yeah,
refrigerator knew that you were low, right? And so it comes back to what you're saying. What do we do with all the people?
yeah, yeah. And I think here you got, we've touched on the kind of economic issue, which I think is pretty fundamental. Um, the 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 tech bros will tell you we're going to move to some age of abundance. Okay, I mean, if you listen to the likes of Sam Altman and Elon Musk and so on, there's this sense that AI is going to usher in this new world of abundance. If I could describe it, I would say the vision they paint is a kind of Gene Roddenberry Star Trek kind of world where all the world's problems have been solved, and this kind of thing. Whereas actually, I'm more with Jeffrey Hinton, the guy at Google who used to be called the godfather of AI. he quit Google to so he could speak out more about this. And he basically said, look, we live in a world that's incredibly unequal, and all that's going to happen is that some people are going to get very, very, very rich, and other people are going to go by the wayside. And I fear that's where we're headed. And if we are headed that way, we've got those fundamental economic issues like how are people affording to live, um, how are they consuming goods and services that keep the economy going, um, what about welfare bills or universal basic income? But we've also got issues like um, psychology, which would be how do people feel about themselves in a world where you discover that everything that you'd worked to do over time, that you'd learnt about, spent time studying, perhaps, or something like this, it can all be done better by a machine. It can be done quicker by a machine. It can be done cheaper by a machine. Um, I think that human beings are not going to cope well with this, and really, the prospects for us as individuals and how we cope psychologically really quite worries me, particularly as it's unfolding so fast. I mean, it's very difficult to put time frames on any of this stuff. Um, the CEO of Anthropic has is one of the few people who's actually sort of nailed his colours to the mast and said the next 5 years we're going to see unemployment in the States rise to between 10 and 20% as a result of AI. There's few people kind of brave enough to actually put numbers on it, or and some people might say, well, where's he getting his numbers from? Is it just out of thin air? And perhaps it is. But I think the question is, it could happen in 5 years, it could happen over the next 10 years or the next 15 years, but this is still a very, very short period of time for human beings to adapt and to change. And what's that going to mean for us?
Yeah. And I think the guy just typed into AI, hey, tell me what industries in the next 5 years will be killed by AI. I mean, I'm sure it
Yeah.
wasn't a very difficult thing for him to look at because, like you broke down earlier, there's certain industries that are completely vulnerable to AI. They just are. And so the other thing you touched on about how we're going to deal with that. I mean, think about when coal mines and
Hmm.
coal power plants, right? These workers who were hard-working people, and especially in London, I mean, they're like romanticized in all the movies, right? Mary
Yeah, yeah,
Poppins and these guys, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
As as that technology changed, these people were pissed. These people were
yeah, yeah.
not happy with the fact that they went to work, they shoveled coal 8 hours a day to keep the plants
Mm.
going, right? And now electricity came from somewhere else. They didn't weren't using the coal so much. That didn't go over well. So now
No, it
times
certainly
that
did.
by 1,000, right? Times
Yeah,
it
yeah,
by
and you're right. I mean, I remember, in the UK, the 1980s was the period where all of this changed. So the Reagan era in the States, the Thatcher era, where Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the UK at the time, and you're absolutely right. Big, heavy industry in the UK, the coal mining, shipbuilding, steelworks, this kind of thing, they all started to disappear. And at the time, there were big, very big, ugly, acrimonious industrial disputes, strikes, and there was a lot of conflict between the strikers and the police and the government, and so it was a time of immense conflict, which I remember as a teenager. Um, but these guys were all in unions, and they were organized. I mean, one of the interesting things about AI is that it starts to impact people in white collar work where traditionally you wouldn't be organized in any kind of collective body. And I'm particularly conscious also of self-employed people, for instance. So there's a let's say you're self-employed as something like a graphic designer at the moment. You what you find is that gradually over time you start getting fewer and fewer gigs. There's less and less work coming, and you think, well, is it the economy? Is it AI? Is it a mixture of the two? But you kind of plow on because what choice do you have? You spent years learning how to be a graphic designer and you've got skills and you enjoy the work. And then it gets a bit worse, and you think, well, actually, I'm going to have to get a day job now. I am going to have to go and work in a retail store, or I'm going to have to uh, go into hospitality or something like this. And then you find, well, you're competing with loads of other people who are also being displaced from this kind of white collar work. And um, these people will not show up very quickly on government statistics. That
Yeah.
we won't see a massive big moment where we suddenly say, well, like all this kind of self-employment has gone. It'll just happen gradually. It's kind of death by a thousand cuts. And there won't be any picket lines, and there won't be people throwing rocks at the police. It'll just happen in the background, leaving a lot of people without any work. Am I sounding too gloomy here, Gary?
Yeah. It's like, what is it? Woke Walesa, it was in Poland, is when they all protested and he rose to power back in the 80s because of that type of shift where the people felt, look, no one's looking out for us. You're stripping us of our careers, what we've done forever, and no one is looking out for us. We need to come protect ourselves. And without the unions, like you said, as the little mom and pops start going away,
Mm.
it's almost a silent sort of killer in a sense, where they just start going away. And what happens to them? It's like homelessness in California. It's like all of a sudden, where did these millions of homeless come from? And when they looked at these people, these were not like drug addicts, street people. These were
Mm.
like families who just had been downsized, or the economy just came too tough for them, and they literally became homeless, even if they were still working, right? And it's a
Yeah, yeah. I
tragedy,
mean,
but
we know that, the old adage that we're kind of all, most people, I guess, are a paycheck away from this kind of thing. There are people, if you've managed to build a successful business, or you're an entrepreneur, or whatever, maybe things are more comfortable for you. And if things don't work out, you've still got resources. But lots of people are working week to week, month to month. They're waiting for their next paycheck. When that doesn't come, they don't have any great amount of savings. I mean, in the UK, there's an astonishing figure for like the average savings of an individual being something like, $600 or $700 or something that they've got in the bank, which seems extraordinary, but this is the reality for a lot of people. And it might be, of course, that that figure is a bit healthier for people who've worked in reasonably successful white collar professional roles, and they've got a little bit more slack, but they're not going to have endless amounts of savings to draw.
and it's not any better on this side of the pond either. I mean, I think I saw a statistic. It's over 50% of people, if they had a major car breakdown, they don't have $1,000 to get their car fixed. And
Mm,
then
mm,
that just steamrolls if you needed your car for work. But so the question that is on so many people's mind, I know it's on mine, and I ask myself all the time, is how is AI controlled, or who controls it, or
mm.
is it controls? I mean, who is the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain who running AI? Is there such a creature?
Well, I think the danger is that probably there won't be. That the very nature of this, the very
That's good to
nature of
know.
this, well, the very nature of this technology is that it will largely work autonomously, and it will do its own thing. And this becomes, alarming at so many levels, which goes beyond my book. I mean, my book is mainly about uh, loss of jobs, and I've looked at different kind of professions and so on, and also that kind of, as I say, that kind of sense of human redundancy in the broader sense of not being able to contribute to society and so on. But let's be honest, there are 100 other things that AI might usher in that we should be concerned about. I mean, what about the use of AI in the military, for example? And we might be quite happy with the thought that the US military or the British military are using AI, but we know that the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans, they're all using AI too. Um, what if weapon systems start making autonomous decisions about who they target? Um, who exactly is in control of that, and who has responsibility for it? What about AI in the financial markets, for instance? There's
Yeah.
already a lot of trading that is done algorithmically in a sort of split second because we're dealing with fine sort of wafer thin margins in terms of getting a deal through or buying, selling, and so on. But the more that this becomes dominated by AI, there's a really interesting academic in Israel called Yuval Noah Harari, and he wrote a book called Nexus on information systems over time, including and up to including AI. And you know, he says, look at the financial crisis. That was brought about by the fact that we had, as humans, had created these obscure commoditized products in the financial markets that no one really quite understood, or a lot of people didn't. Perhaps a lot of people, even working in the markets themselves, didn't quite understand what the potential was. And then once the US subprime housing market goes, and so it sets in motion a cascade effect on the whole financial system. So what this guy Harari is saying is, in the future, AI will be creating more and more products that only AI will be able to understand. That actually some of these financial products that it manages to dream up will not, humans won't be capable of understanding the implications of them. And so we're losing control. So why do we plow on with this when these kinds of threats are so obviously around the corner? I mean, to me, it's kind of screaming that the sirens are wailing, that there is something seriously um, wrong down the road. Um, and yet governments seem obsessed with the idea that AI is going to generate economic growth. Businesses seem obsessed with the idea that AI is some kind of panacea that's going to increase their profits. And we seem to be on a kind of a roller coaster ride, Gary.
You know, I remember the 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. It kind of just kept going. It never stopped. When Bill Clinton removed the Glass-Steagall Act, which allowed the banks to then invest, which they weren't allowed to invest for since the Great Depression. So when he unleashed the banks to do that, and then of course that Wall Street goes, wow, we have trillions of dollars that we can play with now, right? We could take people's savings, which we couldn't play with before. Now we're going to create these derivatives, and we're going to split up these mortgages, asset backs. It's going to be crazy. Now imagine instead of some guys in Wall Street who already have tons of money, they just do this for fun. They don't do this for
Mm,
money. Imagine now AI creating those things, like you said, right? Now AI is creating these sort of investment vehicles that are just they don't make sense to anybody and they're unstoppable and they can just crater the economy. It seems like our economy craters faster and faster every decade anyway.
mm,
And the other thing you said, which is so true, which is, I mean, I don't know how it works with the prime minister in England, right? But in America, a president really doesn't know anything when he goes into office. They don't tell the president a lot of things. The people who are always there, they know this guy or gal is coming every 4 years, right? They
mhm,
don't tell him everything because they don't want him or her to know everything, right? So these guys come
mhm,
in and they're like, "Hey, are there aliens?" Well, we're not going to tell you, right? Or is this, who killed JFK Jr. Or, but so imagine that on a higher scale, right? Where
mhm.
where AI isn't telling us what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's insanely scary and bizarre. Like you said, the
Well,
red lights are flashing now.
yeah, yeah. And, there is evidence recently that these AI models are actually quite prone to deception. Okay, so we've known, for instance, that they hallucinate. So this is the idea that AI makes stuff up So if you use platforms like ChatGPT or Claude or something like this, they start inventing things that don't really exist, or I mean, there's examples in the States, for instance, of lawyers going into court and quoting precedents from legal cases, and the judge has said, hold on a second, these cases don't exist, and the lawyers have generated it through ChatGPT. Um, and so there's the hallucination thing, and people in
That's
Silicon
insane.
Valley, um, they don't actually know, I think, yet whether you can solve this hallucination problem or whether it's actually very intrinsic to the whole nature of the technology. So there's that issue, and then the next level is the AI making decisions to protect itself. Okay, so um, there are examples recently of testing of AI where they were given a scenario for the AI was given a scenario where it was going to be shut down, but it was also given information about the people who were managing it. And they were told, for instance, that the guy who was going to be shutting it down was having an affair, showing emails related to this, and then it starts blackmailing the blackmailing the human to say, you know, no shutting us down. If you do, your sordid secrets are going to come out. And so here, I don't want to delve too much into the world of science fiction. Obviously, there are people who believe that potentially AI could develop some kind of consciousness. I'm not, I'm not qualified, Gary, in any way to know whether that's true. All I would say is that even now, at a stage where we could be pretty sure that it's not conscious, it can still act in ways that are kind of duplicitous and designed deliberately to deceive us, and ways that might manipulate us, and so on. It knows everything about us, of course, because it's been trained on virtually everything that's ever been written, everything that's ever been posted on the internet, every book that these big tech companies have got from pirated websites and fed into their large language model, which is a huge controversial issue, all that intellectual property being swallowed up. And so they know all our weaknesses. The AIs know our foibles. They know the things that are most likely to provoke a certain reaction within humans. That's why they're very good at doing things like writing marketing copy, which is kind of my background, because they know what marketing copy should sound like, and they've observed all the techniques that people have used in the past to sell stuff to people, and they're able to replicate it. And they're able to say statistically the most likely thing to say here is X, and then the next most likely thing to say is Y. This is dangerous. It is dangerous. We are quite vulnerable as human beings to manipulation.
Yeah. And my son who loves AI, again, he messes with it all the time. So he put in his home and my home, and he said, which house is most likely to sell first? Because we're realtors, so we're looking at different stuff. And it broke down this whole dissertation of why my son is going to sell before I'm going to sell. It was fascinating, the reasons why it came up with and how it broke it down. And it literally did it in a second. But it searched his background, it searched his history, it searched his how he lives, and that he's younger and he has kids and he'll need a bigger house. It was bizarre, right? How it broke this down. But the other thing that he's discovered, because he plays with it and I don't, is that he's like, Dad, I guess there's three or four main ones, Gronk and ChatGPT or whatever. And he said the crazy thing is you could ask all three of them the same question. And
Hmm.
because Google is a left-leaning organization, it will get a little bit more slanted answer than the other ones. Is that true? I mean, are they able to mess with it like that still?
Well, I mean, you can. So there is this idea of hard coding certain parameters for the AI. So I think, in some of these tech businesses, yes, they have made interventions to say, for instance, um, you know, there are levels that we could all agree on. So, for instance, they might go in and say, we don't want you suggesting things that might lead to people taking their own lives or taking medicines that they shouldn't take or whatever. You can go in and maybe set parameters for that kind of thing and to try to um, bypass the natural propensity of the machine just to make up stuff to suit the prompt. When we get into kind of the more political areas, it's a little bit difficult to know. But I mean, clearly that these firms will respond to prevailing public opinion. So if they think, for instance, that the outputs of the AI skew politically one way or another, and they feel pressure to drag it back in a different direction, or perhaps their company values suggest that it should go in a different direction. I can't rule that out as being possible. I mean, I think Elon Musk, his XAI and Grok, some people would argue perhaps that that's in the opposite direction to Google, and
Yeah.
that that has its own ideological agenda. So again, I don't think it's kind of clear cut here. I think it might be that we've got platforms that do sort of lean both ways on the political spectrum a little bit because of the attitudes and ethos of the people that own the businesses. But it's also opaque. It would be really hard for anyone to know what had gone on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So your book, AI and the Redundant Human, we kind of started talking about this out the gate, which is what do we do with all these people? So when you're when you put this book together, I know you're adding to it because the stuff is changing and developing so quickly all the time. But the initial short book, AI and the Redundant Human, I mean, where were you going with that? What did you seem to find as you were putting this together? And why did you use the term redundant human?
Yeah, I mean, I know it seems provocative. I mean, I like the word redundant really because of the kind of double sense of it. Uh, I mean it in terms of literal redundancy. We might lose our jobs, we might lose our
Yeah.
work. But I also mean it in the sense of, um, are we going to create a society where we can't contribute anything anymore? And, one area we haven't touched upon, for instance, education is a fascinating area with AI. What does this mean for teachers in schools? What does it mean for professors in colleges, and so on, and for the students? If you can go in and at the press of a button create an essay or a paper that you're supposed to submit, and then what are you learning in that process, and what then is the role of the teacher? In the UK, teachers have been told they can use AI to mark the kids' work. And I'm thinking, hold on, isn't that an intrinsic part of what a teacher's job is all about? The argument would be, no, that's the drudgery. You shouldn't have to do stuff like that. So you can focus on other things like planning the classes, except AI is very good at planning the classes as well. And so maybe you shouldn't waste your time on that. So maybe you're going to spend more time in front of the kids talking to them. But there's schools already that are abandoning teachers. I mentioned in the book there's a school called Alpha in Texas. It's a private school. It's $40,000 a year to send your kid there, but they don't have any teachers, and the kids go in the morning and they have 2 hours of interaction with AI on a screen, and there are
Wait, this
kind
is
of
in Texas? Texas in the
yeah,
United States?
indeed, yeah, it's called Alpha, um,
Hmm.
and they spend a couple of hours on the screen in the morning, and apparently their grades are very good, and according to the school that they even outperform other schools at their kind of academic work. In the afternoon, they seem to do a lot of weird and wonderful things like get the kids to solve Rubik's cubes and build IKEA flat pack furniture and things like this. I don't know what the thinking is behind that, but they have kind of adults in the room watching the kids work with the AI, but these people are not expert in the subject matter. They are only there to guide the kids in how to interact with the AI. They don't know anything particularly about math or history or English or whatever it is the kids are studying. And so the teacher's gone. And I, I'm not saying that teachers are going to be replaced on a large scale anytime soon, but I do believe that professions that we have historically thought were absolutely untouchable, so lawyers, doctors, teachers, people like this, are going to be impacted by AI. In the world of medicine, we've got the situation now where AI can read scans better than humans, can diagnose conditions better than humans. And then my question would be, if you're going to start out at medical school and you're going to get into tens of thousands of dollars of debt and you're going to spend long, long hours training to be a doctor, and you're going to come out the other end and be told, well, actually, your opinion isn't worth very much because there's this machine that knows better than you what this condition is. Not only that, it can prescribe a better course of treatment than
Yeah.
you'd be able to prescribe. Why would anyone train to be a doctor? Am I being alarmist here, Gary? I can see the writing on the wall with this, and the only question to my mind is how long it takes to unfold. We might all want to hear a diagnosis from a human being. I would much rather go to a human doctor than listen to an AI tell me I had something wrong with me. But what if I were told statistically the AI was more likely to be correct than the doctor? The only reason I'd be going to the doctor is out of superstition, because actually the science would tell me I would be better off being diagnosed by the AI. This is how kind of fundamentally this technology is going to be changing our society, the status of these people, of the teachers, the doctors, the lawyers, people who had all this specialist knowledge and they trained for so many years to do it. Why we pay them so much? Why would I go into go to a lawyer for a simple piece of legal transaction, say property conveyancing, obviously you're a realtor, property conveyancing, for
Yeah.
instance, or why would I go to sort out my will or probate or this kind of stuff when an AI can do it instantly and more efficiently? And the lawyers who previously been charging large fees, how do they justify them when people know that the work can be done at the touch of a button?
Yeah. You just opened up so many rabbit holes. I mean, first of all, I just had this conversation with my son about doctors, and we were talking about robotics because I had cancer and I discovered it very early myself, and I had to beat the hell out of the doctors for 8 months to do a biopsy so they could tell me what I already knew, which the lump was cancer, right? I knew that. But it took forever to do it. And we only see our doctor for 4 minutes, right? So does anybody even really have a relationship with their doctor anymore? They really don't. I mean, you see the physician's assistant more than you see your doctor because the doctor has to take so many patients now because they don't make any money in America, per patient. So really, at some point, you might go, dude, I'd rather just have AI tell me on my laptop because they send me my scan every 6 months. I go for a scan for the cancer, right? I have to read it myself. I get it 2 weeks before I see my doctor. Now, if AI just sent me that scan and said, "Oh, Gary, you look great. We analyzed it, look fine," I wouldn't go see my doctor.
Yeah.
I trust that. But the other thing is about the school. And to me, that's terrifying because the teacher, the teacher such an important role to a student. And the teacher discovers what's going on in a student's life and how they're performing and what's going on by seeing the progression of their homework and what they're doing, right? I mean, they just do. It's like, wow, Susie, you're getting A's. Now your work's kind of suffering. What's going on? They build that bond. They help the students. And if you're just throwing the shit into the computer and correcting it in AI, you've lost that. then why do we have the teachers? So you can see where the doctors, the teachers, the realtors, the lawyers can easily start being replaced by this, right? It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
I think it's a real issue. I'm sorry to throw that curveball in late in the conversation.
No, it's
It is just
fascinating. I think it's
it is just
crucial
one of
to the
these.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is just one of these topics where the more you dig, the more you kind of think actually nothing that we took for granted previously. You know, things like the status of these people in our society, whether you're, certainly in the States, if you're a lawyer, well, the expectation is you're going to live a very good life. You're going to be commanding high fees, and you're probably done very well for yourself, and it's an incredibly secure job. It's the same in the UK, but perhaps to a lesser degree. And in medicine, obviously, we have a state health system, so doctors don't tend to make the same outlandish sums of money that they might be able to make in the States. But the same principle applies. These are people with well paid, high status kind of roles, um, who might find that the first step is that their status starts to diminish because they're no longer the oracle to which people defer. And once their status starts to diminish, then the next stage will be people questioning why they command such high salaries and fees. And then from there, the next stage is maybe we don't really need them at all. And I don't know what the timescale for all of that is, but I'm thinking it's the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my son yesterday about the difference between the robotics. Like there are a lot of surgeries that a guy in India could do for $1,000 that a guy in America charges $100,000 for, and he could do the surgery robotically. Now, if you could just program the robot through AI to be completely precise on the heart surgery, now you've replaced a $200,000 surgeon, because that's a hugely expensive operation, right?
Yeah.
Now AI is just programmed into the robotics, and the robot literally does the surgery with more precision, unfortunately, because it's a very, very brutal. A good friend of mine is a heart surgeon, very renowned heart surgeon, and it's destroyed his body. It is very hard on these surgeons to spend 10 hours stooped over a body
Mhm.
doing this work. And so to have them, so you can see that, but something you touched on earlier, though, also I've neglected to come back to, which is purpose. People need a purpose, regardless. No matter what your job is, most people, less and less now, but most people have pride in what they do. It's important to them to get up, go to work, get a
Yeah.
paycheck. COVID kind of wiped out a lot of that, right? But you
Mhm.
could see how as purpose goes away, the mental health of people is going to
Yeah.
really suffer on the other side of this, don't you think?
I do. And obvious things are borne out by research. If you're unemployed, your mental health suffers. In employment, you do have that sense of purpose, and although it seems like common sense, it is borne out by academic studies as well. And I think that um, we there is an onus on government, particularly, but also on large businesses to start planning. If we're going down this road of AI, there is an onus on government and businesses to be talking honestly to the people that work for them about what's coming down the line and trying to prepare for what's going to happen. And I do think there is also a case for actually asserting the value of something that's been created by a human as well, and to say that's more intrinsically valuable than something created by a machine. Think about world like music, for instance, or art. You know, now musicians are threatened by the fact that you can generate music through artificial intelligence. Is their music going to get swamped out in a tide of AI generated music, and harder for them. It's already hard for them to make a living, but now
Yeah.
they find it impossible to make a living, perhaps, or they find that their work has been used as training data for the AI, and therefore the stuff the AI is producing is derivative of their own work, that they can't make any money from it. I really think we have to say, as a society, there is more intrinsic value to music produced by a human being who feels it and lives it than there is music produced by a machine. That there's more value to a book that has been written by somebody who cares about something or is telling their own story, or a gripping tale from their imagination, than something synthetic that's been created by a machine. We are in danger of not only people feeling redundant, useless, um, but also finding that it's harder and harder to distinguish real human stuff from artificial. And in
Yes.
that world, people really start to feel very lost, I think.
I have some good friends in the movie industry and some good friends in the music industry. And I think the movie industry is toast. These people are in full blown panic because I mean, I'm the type of geek because my family was in the movie business for long. I'm the type of geek who watches all the ending credits to see the hardware guy, the handyman, the
Mm-hmm.
caterer. I mean, the thousands of people it takes to
Yeah,
make a movie, right? Thousands,
yeah,
hundreds, right? And then locations. All that's going to be gone. AI is
yeah,
going to, you can make movies with the press of a button. And honestly, the movies are so garbage now, it really doesn't matter. There isn't, hasn't been a good movie in so long. It's all the special effects and all the crap. So it really won't matter. But music, what my buddy was telling me, he goes, it's going to be a revitalization, a revolution of live music where
right.
you'll have the AI music, and that's going to be fine. They're going to create a new Beatles, they're going to create a new Led Zeppelin, whatever, right?
Yeah,
But what they won't be able to take away is live music because
yeah,
there's you can't show up to an arena and there's a little box there, then AI starts playing. It just does, it's not going to happen, right? So, yes, they're going to lose a lot. So, a lot of these guys, like Chris Rock talks about it all the time. Chris Rock is like, dude, I don't even record anymore. I don't give a shit. I just do live concerts because
yeah,
number one,
yeah.
I make a lot of money. I
That's where the
interact
money
with
is. Yeah,
my fans, right? And so I think we'll see a little of that. But so just back to your book real quick, and I'm sorry we're going over, but it's just so fascinating to me. If you're okay with just a couple more minutes,
of course.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, so the book, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's a moment in time. It's a snapshot. So if anyone's interested in getting hold of it, it's on Amazon, it's on Lulu. You can search it, AI and the Redundant Human. But what I'm also doing is updating with articles, basically on that look at things that just occur to me as I see news stories. This is developing week by week. And if I read something that prompts me to write, then I will. One thing I just covered in the last couple of days was on a local Facebook group, for instance, um, there was a woman who'd given an account of how she'd fallen ill at a tube station in London. She'd been rescued by Good Samaritans, basically. She'd since been recovering in hospital, and she was grateful. She was reaching out to the people who'd helped her at the rail station. And underneath this post, I saw Meta AI coming up, and it was saying, you know, how's this woman doing now? Question mark. And I was supposed to click on this, and one of the ladies that had helped her had an American accent. She, revealed that in a post, and the AI was saying, find out more about Mandy's American accent. I'm thinking, hold on a second, I don't need AI to help me interpret what's happening here. What? Not only that, the AI doesn't have the first clue about what's going on. The only thing it could possibly do is make stuff up. There is no. So this is the. If I see stuff like this, Gary, what I do is I get onto my Substack, which is called Redundant Human, human.substack.com.
Redundant Human on Substack. Okay, we'll
That's
get
right.
that
And
out
you know,
there.
it's free to sign up for that. The book is just $11,
Yeah.
and you can get
Now,
it on
are
Amazon.
the is the book, is it connected to your 6 point action plan, or is your
It
six
is
point, is that a
the
whole
six
nother
point.
episode, or do you have a sec to cover the six
There
point
is a
action plan?
section,
Okay.
yeah. There's a section covering the action
Okay.
plan. Um,
Okay, cool.
I
We'll
won't.
get the book and find out that.
I'll spare you this. We have covered a few of those points incidentally in our
Yeah.
discussion, but if people are interested, yeah, it's all there in the book.
Okay. Well, Phil, you're fascinating. I've been trying not to use the word fascinating, so you're actually beguiling. Um, I just love this, and I love that you're constantly getting deeper down the rabbit hole. You're updating this. We're going to go to Redundant Human on Substack, and we're going to pick up on your new stuff. And I think you have a blog on your website, right? What's your website?
My website for my kind of professional life is herecomes.thecavalry.com.
Check.
So if anyone's interested in checking that out, yeah, I fear my blog there has not been updated very recently, so I don't want to embarrass myself. But
That's
if
okay.
you're
So
interested,
Substack is the way to go, right? We want to go to Substack.
Substack is probably you're going to get something a bit more up to date.
Okay. Well, everybody, gosh, man, we've been educated and confused and taken down the rabbit hole by Mr. Phil Woodford. Look for his book, AI and the Redundant Human, on Amazon and Lulu, but also Redundant Human on Substack, and pick up his blog and updated stuff like that. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting couple of years, Phil. I think if we all have our head in the sand, we're gonna regret it. And I'm concerned about what the governments are going to do with this stuff, because we're just playthings in their world anyways. So it's going to get dangerous. But I do have one last question, and I'm sorry. I always tell you my first questions, which is the what if you could question. But my second question is, before we sign off, is there a thought or a saying, or is there something you'd like to leave us with that's important to Phil before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I want to leave on a slightly more upbeat note because I don't want people to feel too depressed. I'm going to come back full circle to my what if I could. I'm going to say, don't feel that you have to, grapple with all of these issues alone. It's really important that if you feel impacted by all this stuff that's going on in the wider world, that you get into conversations with other people and get their perspectives and talk quite openly about it. In fact, if we don't do that, we're all cooked. So it's a discussion that has to happen.
That's awesome. And I agree 100%. And that's why I'm so grateful for your time sharing your knowledge on this, because really, I think it's super confusing. Like I said, when Joe Rogan had a 40-year senator on there, and the guy didn't have a freaking clue, and he's setting our legislation in America. I don't. Luckily, the younger generation and smart people like you are going to help us with AI, because we need advocates on the other side of this. And I think you're a great advocate for this. And I'm super grateful for your time, Phil.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the show, Gary, and been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Good deal. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Get educated, and we'll see you next time. See ya. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.